Alright, what's going on guys? Gdoggcasey here, and this is a very new type of video that I'm doing today. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with these types of videos. I really want you guys to let me know in the comments what you think, but I thought it would be kind of a neat idea, and it could potentially grow into something really cool. Something I don't really talk a lot about on the channel is a game that I am really into, but unfortunately don't get a chance to play all the time, is Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons. Both the same type of game, just slightly different rule set. In this specific case, we were playing Pathfinder, and I will probably be playing Pathfinder specifically going forward. It's a system that I really like. I understand it better than the new Dungeons and Dragons one, and I just enjoy it a little bit better. But regardless, that's a discussion for another video, which game is better. But it's really up to you guys. However, in this specific case, with a new roommate moving into the house, and my wife has expressed interest in role-playing games like this before, I figured, you know what? We got two people. I can run the game, so let's go ahead and try it out. And I wanted to sort of let you guys know how our first foray into Pathfinder went. Now, I call it my first. It's really not my first. I've been a player in several games in the past with some other friends. And I've also attempted running games before with both of these players, my wife being one of them, and the other one is my new roommate, Matt, or Detner, who's showed up in multiple videos on the channel already. But we've played before, but this time we're not necessarily taking it more seriously, but we are going to be trying to play for a much longer time and actually get a decent campaign going. That said, this is Jacob's Tower, and I will leave links to Jacob's Tower adventure in the description below. The guy who runs it, it's on a website called Zenith Games, and I was looking up, what's a good adventure to start for new players, but not only new players, but a new GM as well, because I'm not really very well versed in running games either. And this one came up, and honestly, I loved it from the start of reading it. He offers it up for free on the website if you want to use like the blog version, but I did purchase the $10 adventure because I needed to give this guy some money to support what he did, because I think it's really cool. So anyway, there'll be links for that down below. We're using a website called Roll20 to run this game, which allows you to roll dice online. You can roll whatever dice you want, and you can take a look at it down below. The other players who join the game can roll as well, so it's fair. We're all in the same house, but we're playing online anyway, because to me it just makes the most sense to run the game through Roll20, because you can it's interactive on the map. Like, I can make this player, which is my wife's character, controllable only by me and her, so she can move them around and I can move them around, but Matt can't move them around. We can do combat tactically on the map. It just works better this way. I like it. We just talk over Discord, even though we're all in the same house, and do it that way. But I wanted this video to be a little bit of an introduction to the game, although I'm not going to be explaining the rules very much. It's mostly just going to be how the first floor of Jacob's Tower went for us, and whether or not we enjoyed it or not. So the adventure starts off with the players, which I will go ahead and introduce. This is Ladord. He is a human paladin. This is Rowan. She is a elf rogue. This is Kyra, who is a human, I believe, cleric. I can't remember. I think it's a human. And this is Harsk, who is a dwarf ranger. Now, because I only have two players, they are each... So Rowan is Jane's main character, and Ladord is Matt's main character. Matt also controls Harsk, and Jane also controls Kyra. However, these two players basically have no personality. They're sort of role-playing their main characters, and then these two just sort of follow along and do whatever they're told. It seems to be a good way to sort of balance out, because I don't have enough players to run a full game. So this way we can still play. However, each character controls two characters. So that's what we're doing. So what happens is the characters wake up in the first floor, which is right here, in the first room, and they have no idea why they're here. They don't know each other. They just sort of woke up and they're in this room. All they can see is a door to the east and a door to the west, and these like lavish red tapestries or whatever they are, curtains basically on the walls. Now, I sort of set it up. If you guys have ever seen the movie Cube, or Cube 2, or Cube 3, I don't remember. I have a feeling, I think Cube 2 was called Cube Squared, because why would you not call it that? But it's very similar to that movie where they wake up, they have no idea why they're here, they don't remember much about their past. They do remember their childhood and stuff, but it's a little bit of amnesia going on, and they don't know each other. So they introduce each other, you know, the paladin, the rogue, the ranger, and the cleric, and then they sort of have to decide what to do. Well, they wake up in this room, there's really nothing to do but to explore, so they explore, and they actually did find a secret door behind this curtain here. However, the door was locked, and it wasn't locked with a normal locking key or anything like that. It was magically locked, and what they would see were, or what they saw coming out of the door, was a sort of indent in the wall streaming along the west side and moving behind this door, and on the right side, or the east side, exact same thing, streaming along the wall and disappearing behind the doors. So the players decided to go to the west first, and actually I can, I'm not going to play out everything perfectly here, but I can sort of put them all together like this and box them up and move them all together. So they come into this room first, and in here what they see is 10 statues representing some sort of humanoid form. The actual form was an earth elemental, but none of the players were able to tell that's exactly what that was. They just knew it was some sort of weird elemental, or some sort of weird humanoid form with, legs and arms and stuff like that. And each statue had gem pieces for eyes. So it was the paladin's idea to try to pry out some of the gem pieces, and they did it carefully because they thought it was a trap, but there was no trap. Instead, what happened is after they spent some time prying out the eyes of all of these statues, they were surprise attacked by an actual earth elemental who came out of the ground and attacked them. Unfortunately for the earth elemental, he wasn't able to do any damage. I don't think he did any damage, and I know that Rowan ended up getting a sneak attack off because she was flanking and managed to one-shot the earth elemental with her rapier, which I thought was kind of funny because the earth elemental was made out of stone and she's using like a pokey rapier, but somehow with sneak attack damage because she was flanking, she managed to one-shot the earth elemental. They searched around this room and they did find a secret door leading to the south, and this encounter was pretty interesting. There was 2 gems on a pedestal, well, 1 gem on one pedestal, another on another, and there was a sign indicating, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it said something like, you can only choose one. So they talked about it for a bit, and the dwarf has an appraisal skill, so he was able to appraise both gems and found that one was worth 500 GP and the other one was worth 100 GP. GP is basically gold, so 500 gold and 100 gold. So they took the one worth 500 gold, of course, and the 100 gold one just disintegrated right into dust in front of them. Which is kind of funny because Jane mentioned after that she was sort of thinking about using sleight of hand to take that one at the same time. But the rule in the dungeon, or in the actual adventure, was that if both were touched at the same time, then both gems crumbled into dust and they get nothing. So luckily she didn't do that, and they end up getting the 500 GP gem. They then move into this room, and this room has 5 columns here, 5 hallways you can see. Each hallway has a painting on the end, and there's a pedestal which looks like a hand on this map. Sorry, it looks like a hand, but there's a pedestal here that said the word male bulge. And every time I say it, it sounds like I'm saying male bulge, and I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, so we'll just pronounce it male bulge. It was written in 2 languages, Common, which is it's not English, but it's like English, basically the most common language in the Pathfinder universe. And the other one was in Infernal. And none of these characters were able to read Infernal, so they weren't able to tell that the word was Infernal related. And they look at each picture. One of them depicted a dwarf, one of them depicted an island. I can't remember all of them, but the one that mattered, which was this one, depicts an area that looks all fiery and hellish and stuff, and it is an area called Male Bulge, which is an infernal place of some sort. What happened was they were able to make knowledge checks to figure out if they knew what the paintings meant. A couple of them succeeded, so they knew the painting was not related to the word Male Bulge, but a couple of them failed, and a couple spring-loaded arrow traps went off. One of them actually missed the dwarf, I believe it was, because he rolled like a super high reflex. I can't remember. Either the arrow trap rolled low or he rolled high. I can't remember. And one of them actually struck the cleric and did a little bit of damage. It wasn't game ending or anything like that. So when they finally manage to look at the right painting and to go down the right hallway, it dissolves into a doorway and they can move into the final room on this side. So they all move into this room, and what happens in here is it's pitch black, but they can see sort of weird footsteps along the ground in the dirt. This room didn't actually have like tiles for floor. It was a dirt floor, and they were able to see that there was like footsteps, and what they did was they split up and they looked around, and the dwarf went, whoops, I'm like moving everything here, but the dwarf went to the left and Ledord, the paladin, went up to the right here. And they encountered a ghoul up here and a zombie down here. Now the difference is the zombies are relatively easy to kill. They don't have a lot of hit points. They're not very smart. The ghouls aren't very smart either, but they're tougher creatures. The zombie basically went down super easily. The ghoul, however, because Ledord, I don't know, he thought he's trying to play like a very ultra lawful good paladin. So I guess he thought he could diplomacy the ghoul, because the way I described the ghoul was that it was like a humanoid figure that was like that was wearing like not any clothes, like not naked, but basically like tattered clothing. He had gray skin with chunks of it falling off and stuff like that. I was trying to explain it as an undead, but Ledord decides to try to diplomacy, and he actually rolled a 20 on his diplomacy roll, which was infuriating, because then he thought he was going to get something out of it. But I actually just decided, no, you're not diplomacying a ghoul. The ghoul attacked him and inflicted ghoul fever on him, so he's actually diseased and loses some of his dexterity and his constitution, which means he loses some of his armor class and some of his hit points. Luckily, Ledord managed to avoid being paralyzed, because the ghoul can actually paralyze you as well. And if you're paralyzed and you get attacked, you have a chance to just be one-shot dead, because you're helpless. So basically, the ghoul can just one-shot you. And that was very close to happening, but it did not happen, and they managed to defeat the ghoul. And in here, they find a treasure chest and a lever. They open the treasure chest, they got some gold and some other things I can't fully remember. It's not the most important. But they pull the lever, and it lights up this sort of indent, which, by the way, was following the wall all the way through up into here. And it lights it up, and the light sort of travels along and comes over to the center of the room. So basically, with that, they finish this half of the floor. So they come back over here, and they can see that the indent in the wall is lit up, and it's basically looking like it's powering the door on one side, but the other side still needs to be powered. So, with that said, obviously, they move over to the right side, and in this room, it stinks to holy hell. It's like one of the most disgusting rooms they've ever been in. It's basically a room that it looks like all the animals in the area had been trapped in here for ages and ages. There's dead animal bodies, there's animal feces all over the place. This little water trough here is disgusting, and there's dead animals everywhere. However, there's still some animals alive. A lot of little rodent-type creatures like hedgehogs and rats and even a snake here and there, just sort of like, scurrying away. They're not really big enough to make any impact. However, there was a dog, a pig, and a skunk that were all sort of mentally capable enough to attack the adventurers as they came in here. It was kind of funny because Ledord came in, and Ledord is probably the most combat capable, and he comes in and just one-shots a dog, just like cuts the dog's head right off. And then the pig attacks Ledord and ends up biting him, causing some damage, and Ledord had some trouble hitting the pig, which was kind of funny because he was able to one-shot the dog and then kind of had a bit of an epic battle against the pig. The skunk, however, targeted Rowan and was trying to basically spray her with his musk, and he had 2 attempts at it and failed both of them. Luckily, Rowan was able to avoid being nauseated, which is a bit of a tough debuff, especially when in the midst of combat, and she avoided that, so that was good. Eventually, they kill the pig as well, and after searching the room, they find that this little water trough actually extends into another room hidden behind the wall. So Rowan is the one who found it, so she decides to swim through it She passes her swim check, which is very good, because if she would have failed, then she would have been infected by cholera, which is some sort of like water disease. I don't really know much about it, but it would have affected her stats and made her sick. So she avoids that. She finds the body of a halfling adventurer. They find like a masterwork leather set, a masterwork sword, but they're all small size, and none of these characters are small, so they can't actually use that stuff. They found some, I don't know, maybe some gold. I can't remember all the details, but basically they were able to find that, and they pick up that loot, which they'll be able to sell later. So then they decide to proceed into this room. And what happens in here is, before they all get in, they make a perception check to look around and actually notice that on the inside of the doors, there are scratch marks. Like, it looks like somebody was trapped in there, basically. Scratch marks from weapons and from claws and stuff like that to try to get out. The room on the other side is actually open a little bit. It's not wide open, but it's ajar. And it's something that's sort of interesting. They knew something was up just by the fact that there were scratches on the doors, but they come in anyway. And actually, Ledord had this idea to pull the dead pig and sort of use it to stop the door from closing, because he was almost positive the doors were going to slam shut, and he was right. However, the doors slammed shut with such force that the dead pig wasn't enough to stop, and basically just like the door, when it slams shut, the pig just explodes into blood and the door shuts anyway. What happens is the room then just goes dark, and a ghostly figure shows up in the center of the room, where he doesn't have any significance to the party at all, but essentially he haunts this room. And what he does is he stretches his arms out and causes a massive flame to just engulf the entire room. And then what exactly? I can't remember the exact details of what happened here, except that Ledord had the amazing idea to throw holy water at the ghost, because I explained it as a ghostly figure, so he basically thought that it was a ghost, and holy water is supposed to be good against a ghost. So he throws holy water on the ghost and actually just evaporates it in one round. The players all took 1 damage from the fire, but then the issue was resolved. The fire goes away, the ghost is dissolved, and the room is complete. That could have been a much scarier room here if he didn't know to do that, because they would have had to break down the doors, and that would have taken some time, and they would have taken more fire damage. But they solve it with minimal damage and move on to the last room on the right side. This room was interesting because there's a statue. It's covered in just like beautiful stuff. There's gold and baubles and gems and everything all around the place. There's a glass chandelier dangling from the ceiling. There's just really like expensive looking stuff all around the room. And then there's a statue on the north side here with these 3 pedestals in the middle. Each pedestal has an eyeball on it, and it says something. So the one on the left said, work for me. The one in the middle said, entertain me. And the one on the right said, craft for me. And this was basically a test to allow each adventurer to use some of their non-combat skills to get through this room. What happened was the dwarf decided to use his appraisal skill to try to, as a job, to try to convince the pedestal that he was working for it. Rowan used her athletic ability to dance to try to entertain the pedestal here. And Ledord, none of them had any crafting skills. So they talked about it for a bit and decided that Ledord should offer up the masterwork longsword that they got from the dead adventurer as a way to show that they had crafted it. Basically trying to trick the pedestal into thinking they crafted it. Well, Harsk rolled a terrible roll on his appraisal, so he got shocked by the pedestal for some damage. Rowan did a good job, if I remember right, and actually ended up, succeeding in her check. And Ledord got shocked as well because they tried to bend the rules a bit, and that wasn't something that the pedestal was having any of. So they both got shocked for some electric damage. But when Rowan succeeded, the eyeball on the pedestal opened up. So then what happened was Harsk rolled a better appraisal check, and he ended up passing this check, and the eye opens up as well. what he realized when he was appraising the or the crystal chandelier. He actually realized that all of the expensive looking shit in this room was actually fake. It was just still images created by a mage, and none of it actually had any value. Over here on the crafting side of things, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lador, but it might have been Harsk who did that one as well. They basically used their survival skill to put up like a campfire, and they crafted basically a nice campfire, and it worked. And all 3 eyeballs opened up, and what that did was the statue's eyeballs opened up at the same time, as well as his mouth opened, and behind his mouth was another lever. They pulled the lever, the same thing happened. The indents in the wall, which was, I keep forgetting to mention, but the indents are following the walls all through here, like a power cord. Think of it like a power cord. And he pulls the lever, it lights up the indents in the wall, and of course, they basically have unlocked the secret door in the first room. So, they come to the first room, the door's open, and they see this rickety-looking bridge, which is depicted on the map here, which is 20 feet high, and below it is just like 1,000 rats, maybe even more than that. Just a huge amount of rats that are infesting the bottom pit here in this room. And all they have to do is make it across the bridge. And this is where things got really interesting. This is essentially where I decided to do this, because the funniest thing happened. So they talk about how they're going to get across, and they want to try to make it so that it's easier to get across this rickety bridge. So Harsk the dwarf uses his crossbow to shoot a bolt across and stick it in the wooden door here with a rope attached to it, because they had rope. And they use that rope to basically tie and sort of try to engineer the bridge to make it a little more sturdy. It didn't really make the bridge more sturdy, but I allowed them to do it to give them a bit of an easier chance to cross the bridge. They can hold on to that rope as well as a little bit of extra strength or something like that. It didn't really make too much sense to me, but I let them do it anyway because they were trying, and it made just enough sense for it to be allowed. So here's the thing. So in Pathfinder, or a lot of these role-playing games, you have to roll a 20-sided dice to pass a skill check. And in this case, all they had to do, the normal skill difficulty, or difficulty class is what's called, the DC of this bridge was 10. As long as they can do an acrobatics of better than 10, they can make it across fine. If they wanted to take it extra careful, if they specifically said, I'm being very careful, they can move at half of their speed, and the DC would only be 5. So essentially, it's almost impossible to fail. With the fact that they had shot this arrow across with the rope, and they tried to make it a little more sturdy, it actually brought the DC down by 2. So in order to move across quickly, they could beat a DC of 8 and they'd make it across, and to go slowly it'd be a DC of 3. So they made it really, really easy to get across. So Rowan decides, okay, well, this is going to be pretty easy. So she just moves across at normal speed. Okay, Rowan's acrobatics is +7 because she's an elf and she has high dexterity. So being acrobatic is something she's naturally very good at. If it's a +7, that means that even if she rolls a 1, technically she beats it. But in Pathfinder, when you roll a 1, you never succeed. And if you roll a 20, you basically always succeed, unless you're trying to diplomacy a ghoul, in which case I'm not going to let that happen. Rowan rolls a 1. If she would have rolled a 2, she would have passed it, because she would have hit 8, or she would have hit 9, and she would have been able to go through, no problem. But she rolls a 1. So what happens is she runs across, she slips, and falls prone into the pit of rats. Now, the way I had kind of worded this was, there was like 1,000 rats covering the entire floor. But the way the adventure is set up is that they have to fight off one rat swarm, which actually only takes up 1 square. So what happened here is Rowan falls prone. She only has 1 hit point left from the fall damage because she fell 20 feet. She has 1 hit point left. The swarm is adjacent to her, ready to attack. And these guys are trying to figure out what to do. So what they decide, after rolling initiative, I think it was Harsk that won the roll. Harsk went first, and then Rowan, and then it was the rat swarm, and then these two after. Harsk drops a rope down to Rowan. And Rowan is going to use this rope to tie around her body, just in case something bad happened. And this is when we had sort of... I've never really fought using swarm type enemies before. So we sort of got into a bit of a discussion on whether or not tying the rope around her body was going to provoke an attack of opportunity from the rat swarm. Because if you do certain things while you're adjacent to an enemy, they get a free hit on you. For example, if you try to cast a spell, or if you try to shoot a bow and arrow right in front of someone's face, they get a free hit on you. What we decided was that... sorry, I just moved that for no reason. But what we ended up learning was that swarms don't seem to have an option for attack of opportunity. It took a long time to figure that out, because I was basically saying, like, look, if you're going to tie this rope around you, it's going to provoke an attack. So we looked it up, and it actually turns out that there was no attack of opportunity. And the reason why she was tying the rope around her was because she only had 1 hit point, so it was very likely that she was going to get knocked unconscious, which does happen. She ends up getting knocked unconscious, but because there was no attack of opportunity, she was able to wrap the rope around her. She gets knocked out. They pull her body up and pull her in, and then the cleric uses some healing spells to heal them up. She gets back up, and they're fine. They end up walking carefully across the bridge, and they all make it safely, which... the way I'm explaining it sounds like it happened pretty quickly, but we spent like almost an hour in this room because of the fact, like, it was just so hilarious that she rolled a 1 trying to cross the bridge, and the agile, dainty elf, which is supposed to be an expert at this kind of thing, just sort of runs on the bridge, slips and falls into the rats, and nearly dies because of it. Luckily for her, she did not die. So they're coming up to the final room here. They open the door, wasn't locked, and Ledord leads the way. Immediately after Ledord enters the room, he feels a very insistent sort of push on his mind to go back and get help. But he passes his will save. And not only does he pass his will save, but he critically passes. He rolls a 20 on his will save. So because of that, I was like, okay, well, you are easily able to tell that someone is trying to manipulate your mind, and you save so hard against it that during this encounter, you're never going to be affected in terms of mind magic. Somebody was trying to charm him, and it's just never going to work. So out of frustration, the person who tries to charm him shows up she was invisible, but she uses that chance to try to take a sneak attack and fires a heavy crossbow at them. It actually misses, and she's now visible, and she was over here. So the players ended up surrounding her and basically beating her into the ground. It wasn't actually much of a fight. I think that was probably my fault, because she was like a bard type enemy who had magic spells as well. She did manage to get off a summon monster. She summoned a viper to try to help out, but she was surrounded. She had nowhere to go, and she ended up just getting beaten down. The players did try to diplomacy her a little bit, because Ledord is trying to be that diplomatic type paladin. And they found out, well, she just wasn't being diplomatized or whatever. That's a word I just made up, but it seems to make sense. It wasn't working with her, but she did give them the information that they didn't seem to understand how this tower works. They were trying to give her food and make her like them, but she just kept attacking them. And she gave them little bits of information like, you don't know how this place works. You're wasting your time. You're giving me free attacks, basically. So eventually they just beat her into the ground. And she vanishes out of thin air. They kill the snake as well. And that's going to complete this dungeon. So what happens when they kill her is a staircase shows up out of nowhere and comes out of the ground, leading up to a second floor. And that's where we ended this. Now, there is, there's going to be some more information here. Like I said, the players just sort of show up and they have no idea what's going on. In our next session, we're going to be leveling up all the characters. They're all going to hit level 2. And they're going to learn what happens in between each floor. And I'm not going to say that here because they might watch this video, but I will cover that in the next video if you guys are interested in hearing this kind of thing. This went a little bit long. It's actually already 30 minutes, and this is probably about as long as these videos are going to be. I decided to do this one as a test because I like listening to other people's Pathfinder adventures, or Dungeons & Dragons, whatever game, it doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun, and I thought that maybe you guys might have some interest as well. We are going to continue through this dungeon until we feel like we're ready to start a real game. And I don't want to take away from the creator of this dungeon and say it's not a real game. It's a 13-floor dungeon, and I don't know if we're going to do all 13 floors, to be honest. We're going to do probably at least 5 or 6, and maybe we'll do all of them. It depends. If you guys really want to see where this goes, then and you want to hear my explanation of it, then let me know in the comments, and that'll help us make a decision as to whether or not we're going to do the entire thing. But really what we're doing is sort of trying to set, come up with a schedule. Every week we're going to play, and we're going to, try to just hammer that down. If we can make it like 5 or 6 weeks in a row, being consistent and playing every week, then we're going to actually start a new game with actual characters that they created, because these are all pre-generated characters that they're using, by the way. They changed the names, but all the stats and everything is pre-generated, because this is sort of just like a test run. But if this is successful, then we're going to be starting a full-fledged adventure path with Pathfinder, and I'm not sure which one I'm starting with yet, but that's all stuff that we're going to figure out later on. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about this kind of thing, and also let me know if you have any interest in watching videos where we play the game live, because that's essentially where this is going to lead to. For Jacob's Tower specifically, none of the sessions are going to be live, because we're all rookies. We spend a lot of time looking up rules and talking about how we're going to do things and stuff like that. So it's not as, riveting, because it's like, hold on, let me find out what a swarm does for attack of opportunities. It took us like 15 minutes to find the answer. So, that stuff isn't very good for video. But for the actual game we're going to do, like the full-on adventure path, I am toying with the idea of doing it live. And obviously this setup I have here in OBS is pretty lackluster just for the explanation, but we'll set something up a little nicer, the way that a lot of other YouTube channels do their games live, and try to make it look all nice and stuff. It's definitely something I'm thinking about, and I'm kind of excited about it. I would really like to do it, but I also want to hear what you guys think about how you want it, about if you would have any interest in that, basically. So let me know, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit long. It's the type of thing that you can sort of put on while you're playing other games or doing other things. But let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the idea of Jacob's Tower, make sure to hit up that link in the description below. Like I said, he puts the whole thing up for free on his blog. So if you want to see what happens, and if you're interested in maybe running the game yourself, you can do it that way. And if you want to support him, you can purchase his PDF file for $10, which has some illustrations. It's got a lot of the monster information right there. It's a little easier to read off of, and it's a little bit updated as well. So yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Again, let me know what you guys think. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.